I sit on a snow-covered ledge within a forest, blanketed by snow. Told ya, I think to myself. Suddenly, my nose twitches as I picked up a scent. I rush through the forest, leaping up into a tree where I rested on a branch. I know what I am, I tell myself as I look down to a large brown bear which lumbers across the ground beneath me. Not many people can say that. I decided as I leaped from the tree down onto the bear's back, then chomped my own razor-sharp teeth down into the bear's shoulder. Most people tell fairy tales about themselves, I think to myself, while the bear fights back, biting down onto my leg. I responded by ripping the bear's own face off. I've always known what I am, I decided. Coward, someone calls out.
That bear hardly counts as competition. Why don't you try us?
Well, look who's here, I responded. Turning, I see Wolverine, Cyclops, Jean Grey, Storm and Nightcrawler standing nearby. I embarrassed Baldy Locks. Is that it? He said I'd never be free, and yet here I am. I snarled, blood dripping down my face.
Quiet!
Jean utters, telepathically rendering me unable to speak. Cyclops suggests they wrap this up and remarks that they will be home before his coffee gets cold. But suddenly, one head scrambler ain't enough. You should have brought two, I exclaimed as I ripped Cyclops' face off. As I do so, Cyclops unleashes a powerful optic blast. Let's not waste this. I grab Cyclops and hold him up, aiming his optic blast towards the others, and it rips through Jean, Storm, and Wolverine, tearing their flesh from their bodies. Nightcrawler is able to dodge the blast, but looks over at the remains of his friends. "Ugh," he utters, before he teleports towards me. "Say your prayers, Blue Boy," I called out.
"I will send you to hell first,"
Nightcrawler responds. I decided that the problem with Nightcrawler's power is that he gets too close. Nightcrawler reappeared in front of me, his hand inside my chest. But it's too late as I bite down into Nightcrawler's neck. And that's where I do my best work, I tell myself. I then hurled Nightcrawler aside, breaking his arm so that it is still stuck inside my chest. I dropped to the snow-covered ground, knowing that Nightcrawler thought he could tear my heart out. But everybody knows I don't got one, I think to myself, before realizing that this one is going to hurt bad. I then roar as I pulled Nightcrawler's hand out of my chest. The hand holds my heart. I wish that I could have torn Nightcrawler apart with my bare hands. But otherwise, I have no regrets. I know what I am. That's always been my superpower. I think to myself before I close my eyes. In dream, what the hell? I asked as I find myself in some sort of interrogation room.
Hello, Mr. Kree.
A young blonde man remarks as he enters the room. I got questions.
I know you do.
The blonde man tells me before introducing himself as
Doug Ramsey, District Attorney.
I remember you. You were in court when I was sentenced, I remarked.
I was there, but I didn't get a vote.
Doug replies as he sits at the opposite side of the table. He places a black and yellow techno briefcase on the table. That's why you're still breathing, I uttered as I leaned across the table. Two large, wide eyes look up from the briefcase with fear. It's Warlock.
I represent the state,
Doug announces as he holds up some papers which he pulls from the briefcase. Warlock's face on the briefcase appears and frowns. Doug continues, informing me that the state feels I have been judged too harshly. I get it. You all found me while I was comatose and healing. After I beat the Furious Five, you brought me to Krakoa and threw me in too. I begin looking at the shackles around my wrists, which change to vines.
Tell me how you escaped.
Doug exclaims, interrupting me. But I just smirked and pointed out that if I tell, I won't be able to do it again.
You can't tell me how you escaped, because you didn't escape.
Doug remarks, pointing to some notes on a piece of paper. Enough of this shit! I snarled as I lunged forward, breaking the vine shackles and decapitating Doug's head, which bounces off the wall and onto the floor, pools of blood forming around the head.
Are you done?
Doug's head asks. I didn't know you could do that, I replied.
I can't, except in here. Now put me back on the table, please.
I picked Doug's head up and put him on the table, next to the Warlock briefcase, whose eye glances at Doug's head.
You and I had some version of this conversation before.
Doug remarks. I asked if this is the first time I beheaded him, to which Doug replies.
No.
I asked how come I don't remember it, and Doug explains that Krakoa thought it would be better if I didn't, and it was meant as a kindness. Sounds more like a con. I muttered before Doug tells me that Krakoa won't do that to me again. Referring to the papers on the table, Doug tells me that he is offering me a bargain. Krakoa can't free me, but if I sign the contract willingly, Krakoa will grant me mental freedom, and this time I won't forget. So my mind is free, but my body stays in jail. I asked. Doug's head is back on his body now and tells me that until the council changes its mind, it is the best they can do. He adds that it is an act of mercy and that I should accept it. And if I say no, I asked, narrowing my eyes. Maybe rip your head off again? I suggested, leaning towards Doug, who replies.
Then Krakoa leaves you to the fate Professor Xavier decreed. Alive but immobile. Unaware but unable to act upon it.
Forever, I concluded, sitting down. Doug tells me that if it is any solace, Professor Xavier swears that there will be no prisons on Krakoa, and at the very least, nothing like this will happen to another mutant again. Like I care what happens to other mutants, I replied.
It's the best deal you're gonna get, so...
Doug begins before I tell him to just give me the pen, but that they shouldn't pretend I really have a choice. I then appear sitting in a tree, signing a long scroll while Cypher sits opposite of me in another branch and looks at Krakoa that appears in the tree. In dream, don't get me wrong, they were good times. I think to myself as I stand over the severed body of Charles Xavier, blood splattered about. In dream, I caught up with some old acquaintances. I decided while holding up the severed hands of Iron Fist, energy still crackling from them, as Iron Fist himself sits in the snow, looking at his bloody wounds. In dream, and I took down every mutt who ever dreamed they were top dog. In dream, I sit calmly on the edge of a snow-covered ridge. A funny thing has happened. After I killed every enemy, after I tore out the guts of every living thing that ever hurt me, I had time to consider what came next, to wonder what I could be when I wasn't the lackey or the heel or the paid assassin. I had always prided myself on knowing what I was, but was that actually true? Maybe I never got to imagine what else I could be. And suddenly I opened my eyes. In dream, I dressed in a black suit and stands at the bottom of some stairs, which lead into a cellar where a table and chairs are set out in the middle of the room. Welcome, and please be seated. Call me the captain. I greet each of you, my brothers. I called out. A boy with red stains around his mouth walks down the stairs. The boy. The captain remarks. Sabretooth, wearing his traditional costume, steps down next. The beast, says the captain. The three of us take a seat around the table, and the captain announces that we are the Feral Council. A cat can be seen sitting on the top of the stairs, and the captain states that we are here to decide how we spend eternity.
We can have anything we want?
The boy asks, looking at a cake on the table. Only one thing I want, the beast utters, hanging his head. We have killed every one of our old enemies, the captain announces. Drank their blood and chewed their bones. The beast grins.
They screamed and screamed.
The boy grins as he shoves the cake into his mouth. You know who really made a racket when he died? The captain asks, putting the tips of his fingers together. Banshee! We all yell in unison. In dream. And so began the age of Creed the King. I sit upon a cold throne, who traveled the feral lands with only his unbreakable blade, bright fury, slaying strange creatures and countless soldiers who challenged me. And where I went, I left the mark of Creed, a bloody claw print seared into the flesh of the dead. in dream. And then came me and my Starjammers, the scourge of 7 solar systems, the Acanti, the Shi'ar, the Centaurians, and the Chameleon. Every one of these civilizations fell thanks to the secret machinations of the Starjammers. Basically, we are the CIA, but in outer space. Reality. On Krakoa, Black Tom Cassidy is looking at a copy of himself that has formed from the trunk of a tree. He wishes that he didn't have to leave, but won't let the professor travel to Terra Verda without him. There is a rustling noise in the forest behind Tom, and Tom turns to discover one of the copies in the trees has taken the form of myself.
Well, that was interesting. Did you see it too?
Tom asks the visage of Krakoa that has appeared in another tree. Black Tom is the first to see me today, but is not the last. On the shore of Krakoa, Rhapsody is playing her violin, while a ghostly apparition of myself appeared nearby. Some pass it off as a trick of the eye, a flash of light in a dark corner. The Blob is behind the bar at the Green Lagoon when a ghostly version of myself appeared. Others assume it is simply a nightmare. After all, I have starred in more than a few of those. Mole is in bed when he sees the Starjammer version of myself appeared and pointed my sword at him. In dream, meanwhile, I have found the place where I feel most at home. If my body had been thrown into the pit, my mind has chosen to go even lower. Krakoa finally had a hell, and on its throne, a king. I watched Exodus and Emma Frost burn in a raging fire. Worm-like demons engulf Apocalypse. Magneto has been skewered on several large spikes. And another demon is about to bring an axe down on Mystique. Suddenly, something happens that has never happened before. Lightning crackles in the dark clouds that loom over my hell. Something is out of my control. Something not altogether unpleasant. Something new. I looked up as the lightning parts the dark clouds, and 5 beams of energy drop down into the pit. I stand up and walk over to where 5 shadows can be seen on the barren land beneath my feet. I wasn't expecting company. I called out.
What is this place?
Someone with pale white skin asks as they dig their fingers into the ground. Just a little something I threw together. I grinned, before announcing that I had been told there would be no others down here with me. And yet here you are. This isn't what you expected to find, or what you deserved. But you're right to be scared, because no one is coming to save you, I tell my new companions. The ground then erupts around me as I rised up above the new arrivals and announced that I am going to practice on all of them. And that once I get real good at putting them through hell, I am going to do the same to every mutant on this island.